Hello, friends. We are the pastoral staff. Some of us are here from the Lakeview Wesleyan Church, and we are wrestling with the question, can Jesus really heal me? That was the topic of the sermon I preached this past Sunday at Lakeview Wesleyan Church, and we're inviting your questions to that topic. And so here are some of the questions that came in. Let me just recap sort of the essence of the sermon, if I can remember what I said. My main focus was that God always heals holistically and eternally those who hope in him. And then we talked a little bit about the problem of evil. I had 4 pain points. God is not to blame for pain. Mm-hmm. God enters our pain. God finds a way to redeem our pain and use it for good. And then at some point, God eradicates our pain. And so that was sort of the essence of the sermon. And these are some of the questions you've sent, and we're going to try to tackle them together and make some sense together of these very good questions and our response to them. So, first question. What explanation can you give for why God answers my prayer for healing for someone and then not for someone else? So, why would God, if I prayed for 2 people, why would God heal one of those people and not the other? What thoughts jump to your mind? And by the way, I should add, we are thinking off the top of our head pretty much. We have had no prep. We didn't go out and read a theological manual on these questions, so we're just trying to answer based upon our best theological hunches on some of these really good questions.
I mean, I think my initial thought is, I wish I knew. And that is the big question. We can't understand God's ways, and we can't understand why he would choose to heal someone and not someone else. I think of the book of Job, and Job was crying out, and why did God not answer when he asked? And it's just our perspective can't see what God sees, and we can't understand what God understands. And God chooses to heal on this side of heaven sometimes, and sometimes on the other side. And it's not up to us to decide. And maybe that's a hard pill to swallow, but that's what God has asked us to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about eternal perspective, and you're saying that as well, Jessica, that sometimes God heals someone here and now, almost immediately, and then at other times he heals there and later, or begins the healing process here and now, but it becomes fulfilled and complete there and later in heaven.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, when somebody is healed or when someone is not healed, there's something that we can learn from that. I know all of us have experienced pain to some extent, and I can think of another Wesleyan pastor from Ohio who's going through some serious stuff where he's been told, you don't have very long, and he did eventually pass away. But what can God teach me through that, and how can God use this situation for the good of so many people? Even though so many people were praying for him to be healed, how's God going to heal me through maybe even his situation, his pain?
Yes.
And it may take some time to be able to gain that perspective.
Absolutely.
No one wants to be told in the middle of their hurt, oh, well, this is still for God's glory. No one wants to hear that. But sometimes when we're stepping back and we can look back and have some distance, we can see how God really did work in the midst of that, even though up front it was really hard to see that.
Right. Again, he doesn't cause pain. He didn't create a world where there would be death and disease and all that, but he finds a way to redeem it and use it for good, for sure. And you're right, you don't want to just say that to people when they're going through pain. But yeah, it brings up another question that was asked, which is, don't you think that spiritual healing is more important than any other kind of healing? Somebody asked that question. And so going back to that scenario with 2 people we're praying for, say I'm praying for Jessica, your healing, physical healing, and I'm praying for your physical healing, Christian. And even though you get your disease healed physically, yours doesn't. But maybe God is doing something other than just physically healing you. He might be emotionally healing you, or relationally or spiritually healing you. So let's respond to that question. Is spiritual healing the most important kind of healing?
You know, when I think of healing in general and the whole story of salvation and the resurrection of life, I think a lot of people would believe that healing comes both physical and spiritually. So in the end, ultimately, God is going to redeem everything, and in the end, God is going to heal everything. But I think here and now, when we have our mindset on Christ, it does tend to seem more spiritual than physical. And I think some people can even focus too much on the physical side of healing that they don't even think about the spiritual side of healing.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, I kind of think, again, similar to the first question, it's easy to say what the right answer is, which, I mean, the spiritual healing is crucial, and that really is, I think, what Christ desires for us to have wholeness and healing in our lives. And so, but to say spiritual healing is better than physical healing, we don't like that answer because it's harder to see the benefit of the spiritual healing. But I think it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. They're different in their own unique ways, and while God desires wholeness in all of our areas of life, he may show up in one way and not in another, and that's per his desire, even if we don't like it. And so
Yeah, and there is a physical healing that comes with a spiritual healing. Again, going back to the eternality question, and you think about Jesus when he rose from the dead, he rose with a physical body. He had the nail marks in his hands and in his feet, but he ascended to heaven in bodily form, and the angel said he'll come back in that same bodily form someday. And so I do think God seeks to redeem us not just spiritually but physically, but there's a glorified body that goes with that someday will experience no pain or decay or get old or decrepit or whatever. So with the spiritual healing, one of the fringe benefits is the physical glorified body that comes with it someday, sometime.